Welcome to the Doctor Bros, where we have a honest discussion around vet life, both in and out of the clinic. My name is Adam. I'm your doc of the day and your guide through this episode. And as always, I'm joined by a couple of my best friends from vet school.
Hey there, I'm Jeff. I am a residency trained in dermatology veterinarian out in Louisville, Kentucky.
Hey, this is Chris. I'm a GP in North Carolina.
And again, this is Adam. I am a relief veterinarian in Louisville, Kentucky. And on today's episode, we're going to be diving in, talking a little bit about efficiency, just efficiency in the day-to-day, especially in busy clinics. Before we get into that, just going to open with a little icebreaker question. So just want to know what everyone's favorite, it could be childhood, it could be current, just favorite game is. That we could be talking about like a card game, a board game, anything of the like. So for me, I'll start. I really like a game called Quicks. Me and my wife play it quite a bit. It's actually a dice game. If you haven't heard of it, look it up. It's really fun. It's really fun to play with just two people. I feel like that's kind of hard to find as good two-player board dice card games, and it's a really good one. A lot of fun.
Hey, this is Chris. I guess my favorite board game would be Catan. I mean, that's what we used to play with Adam and JT back in vet school.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'd go with that.
Cutthroat.
That didn't cause any fights or arguments.
Never.
This is Jeff. I guess if we're going to go board game, card game route, I really like Blackjack. It's very, very simple, but it's fun and easy. You can get a hold of it. And I know nothing of the strategy. I have nothing like the movie, 21 or something, where people are like really, really good. Yeah, you count the cards and all the things. And I'm like, I'm just here to have a good time. That I'm the one I'm going to bust and go, I lost all my money. And it's over. Also love Settlers Up.
All for the fun of the game.
Yeah.
All right. Well, getting into today's episode, again, we're going to be talking a little bit about efficiency in the day-to-day of the clinic, especially in those situations where you work at a very busy clinic. I know a lot of clinics really saw a boom during COVID and post-COVID, so a lot of clinics are kind of struggling with finding that balance of how to manage a busy setting. So a few different talking points that we have to go through here. So starting out, just thinking of different things we can do to kind of make that day run a little smoother. One thing is, dealing with appropriate scheduling. Sick appointments versus healthy appointments. I've seen clinics that'll do different variations of how long the appointments are based on sick versus healthy. Different surgery protocols that you guys have seen. And then, one big hot topic that I see across the board with different clinics is drop-offs. I see some clinics that do a ton of drop-offs and then some clinics that just don't even touch them. So what have you guys seen kind of in the scheduling aspect of the clinics that you're at in terms of dealing with and managing the flow of the day?
This is Jeff, and I'll say as far as scheduling in general, our doctors do, for the most part, we're similar. So the board certified doctors at my practice, since we're specialty, they have 1 hour initial appointments and then, they have 40-minute initials, half an hour, everything else. And then in special cases, if we know there's going to be a procedure, we usually will extend the appointment ahead of time. Like if we know we're going to do a skin test or a biopsy is coming in, those are usually hour long. As far as my schedule, since I am studying for boards and almost over that hump right now, I have 1 hour initial appointments and half an hour everything else. So technically, I mean, there's no differentiation between quote unquote sick versus healthy appointments in our schedule, since they're all coming in for something skin related and skin related issues, because I don't get the healthy vaccine appointments anymore on my side.
This is Chris. For one JT question, do you guys charge for those hour-long appointments differently than you do for the half-hour appointments? Or is it just because the surgery's built into it or whatever's doing built it doesn't matter?
Yeah, we don't charge differently, technically. We do have, I think, the ability to do an extended charge if something changes or if we haven't seen you for over a year. Then as opposed to a recheck, you may count as a new appointment again. But in general, no. I guess you could say it's built in.
Okay. So I was just wondering. But yeah, no, for us, we do 30-minute appointments for everything. It could be a vaccine appointment. It could be a sick patient. That's pretty much how it runs throughout the day. And then if we're on surgery, then we get to do the surgeries plus the drop-offs. I personally love drop-offs.
Really?
Yeah, I run through them. So, yeah.
Hold on. This is Jeff. When I was in GP, I really hated drop-offs, and it may have been just because we didn't have good flow, because I had my regular day going on and I had my drop-offs, and you were just expected to get through them during your normal day, even if I was fully booked. I had no special time. So it didn't matter if I was on surgery or not. And now in my current practice, we don't really do a lot of drop-offs. Like in a very, very special occasion, we might. But one thing that I always struggled with is when you do have drop-offs is, well, if you see something, it's hard to know what testing to do. Like, obviously if I have a skin case, I'm like, well, do I sample it and hold those samples and look at them later? Or do I call the owner now and get an estimate? And then what if you can't get a hold of them? Then that slows you down. So how do you deal with things like that? Or like, ooh, let me get you an estimate for XYZ. Or if you need to call them to get more information, then make an estimate, then call them back. I felt like that back and forth got on my last nerve. Like, you can make them work, but how did you deal with that?
So I'd say we're a fairly efficient hospital in how we do things. Like our techs are amazing in that aspect. So when they check in for a drop off, the technicians go through and like, what are you here for? Kind of getting a really good history on everything. And then our techs are so good. They know, okay, well, it's here for vomiting and diarrhea. Do you approve x-rays and blood work? And then our will be either say yes, no, or I'll do blood work or whatever. They'll pick one of the two and then call me with the results and we'll go from there. So that kind of helps out. So a lot of the times, like either the techs will come in and pull the blood right off the bat and just hold it and wait for, if I'm not there yet, like it's because they have drop-offs an hour sometimes before we even get there. So we'll just hold it and wait and say, hey, do you want to run blood work? And sometimes I'll say yes, or based on the exam, I'm like, all right, I'm going to talk to the owner. I don't know, but we'll see. Or they'll get x-rays done. So that kind of helps out with some of the efficiencies there. And if it's something for, let's say, ear infection or suspected ear infection, they'll get the swabs on the ears and get them going. So a lot of times they know what we're going to want diagnostic-wise already, so they just go ahead and start it or get it done when the owner approves it. If not, then they say, hey, the owner wants you to look at it first, and then call them with whatever. So that's not a big deal. I usually call them either, if they're there early first thing, I call them before I go into surgery. And then if they come in after I'm in surgery, then I just call them when I'm done. But I always try to tell the front staff to let them know, like, hey, like, we're going to see them. We're going to make sure everything's fine, but don't expect them to be done by noon. If you drop them off at 10 or 11, like, you might not be done till later that afternoon. Just kind of set an expectation, like, it's going to be a while for it to get done, and then we'll get through the day that way. So that's it. I mean, we'll sometimes have 7 or 8 drop-offs and maybe more, and then 3 or 4 surgeries. And we're starting at 8:30 and go till about 12:30, and then come back around 2 o'clock for either to finish the drop-offs or go start our appointments. So I think the big thing is having the techs and making you efficient. And then also too, like if I look at the pet and I think I find something where I'm like, hey, I want to get an x-ray or I want to get blood work done, I'll have my technicians call to get approval, and they'll say, hey, they found this, especially if I'm trying to jump into a surgery, they'll get that approved. Or if I can't get a hold of them, like, hey, I need to get this done. This is what I think I see on the exam. And then they'll get it done for me. So there's a lot of communication back and forth, which is what's really helpful. And we have one technician who is our floater that kind of handles all that. So she's in charge of all the drop-offs with me. So it makes it easier because I can just go to her and be like, hey, can you get this done? Or if I need to get all these treatments done, I say, here, these are the treatments. I called everybody. This is what we need to go and just go. So it's a machine. Like we know what we're going to need to do to get everyone seen and treated properly and not miss anybody. So yeah, I like the drop offs for that reason, but I think it also depends on your location and how well your staff is trained up on doing that. And our techs are fantastic. So I think that helps out a lot, or at least it helps me out a lot.
I think it's funny that you guys are kind of opposites on that, because you guys were, I really, you're like the angel and devil on my shoulders, because I really have a love-hate relationship with drop-offs for the exact reasons that you guys mentioned. Like, in one respect, I really like them because I feel like, I can get to them when I have time, and I can kind of breeze through my exam and do things I need to do quicker. But on the flip side, there is a lot of back and forth trying to get a hold of the client of, well, this is what I saw on my exam. This is the test I'd recommend. You approve that? Okay, let's do that. Now let's call them back. Now, this is what we found. Kind of a lot of back and forth. So in that respect, they can be kind of more drawn out. But I think Chris brings up a good point, because the clinic that I'm at now that does do a lot of drop-offs, the techs are very efficient, and they will do the same type of thing. They'll try to, get diagnostics approved at drop off based on the clinical signs that the patient is having. And then they're really good about reaching out and connecting with the client if we need to add anything else on, or, me personally reaching out and trying to talk to them about additional testing we may need to do. So I do feel like where I'm at now with drop-offs may be a slightly better position than where I've been at in the past with drop-offs. But yeah, it was funny hearing you guys talk about that, because those are the exact pros and cons that I personally deal with drop-offs. So as far as appointments, sick versus healthy, I've worked at several clinics where it is just all the same, maybe a 30-minute appointment. And it's 30 minutes regardless. I've worked at some where they'll do 30-minute for sick appointments and 20-minute for healthy appointments. Some where they'll do 30 minutes for sick appointment or a new pet, or if it's just a recheck or just a vaccine or quick in and out as like a 15-minute appointment. So I've seen a lot of variation with that, and I think it really comes down to finding your groove, what's going to work best for your specific situation. But I think playing around with those methods to try and see, what's going to be the best for you. Because if you do have a doctor that is pretty quick with, especially those healthy pet appointments, you could potentially reduce the time from 30 minutes. That's not always needed. Sometimes even for the healthy appointments, the client may have other things they want to go over. And in that respect, it is good to have that time. But sometimes, you get them in and out pretty quick, and then you're just kind of standing around till the next one. But in one respect too, that can be good to get that little break from time to time too. So a lot of different factors that kind of come into play with that. So the next thing I wanted to bring up was just defining roles of basically who's doing what, because I think that's an important thing to kind of focus on, because, there are specific steps throughout the process of the client walking in the door to when they walk out the door. So, who's getting the history, who's getting the samples, who's checking the patients in, who's checking them out. You would think a lot of times checking in and out would be the receptionist, but I've seen some places where the technicians will go up and check them in and out. Getting the history, is the tech going in first and getting a history, or is the doctor just going straight in? Getting samples, are the techs getting all the samples, running the samples for you, or is the doctor having to do a lot of the samples? And then also are a lot of tests being run in-house, or are they being sent out? I've seen a healthy mix of both with that as well. Early on in my career, most of the clinics I worked at ran blood work and everything in-house, but now I have reached out to and worked with a couple of clinics that send out the majority of their blood work. And in that respect, it kind of gets things moving quicker day of. Now, if they're really sick and we need to find something right away, they'll run it in-house. But if it's something that can wait, 24 hours or so, or if it's just routine blood work, they'll send that out. So in respect of the day-to-day, that can move things a little bit quicker day of. However, that puts a little bit more on your plate the next day, having to call that owner back with the blood work results. So just kind of a few different things there in terms of defining roles, and then also sending tests out versus running in-house. What have you guys kind of seen with that? How do your practices work?
This is Chris. We try to run everything in-house that we can. That's just how we are set up. And our techs do all the blood draws and the sampling. They collect all that for us. Now, I mean, we'll do it too, especially if we're busy. Like the doctors will go ahead and get it done. But let's say, like I said, with it's here for a heartworm test, they're going to get that done right off the bat with their history and get the entire history for us. So that kind of helps us out too. And if we get behind in another appointment, our techs can go grab the next appointment, get that one started in a room with them. So that way we can kind of just jump in and go. Or if we're ahead of schedule, we can kind of see an emergency that kind of popped up that we can kind of see as well. So that's the techs kind of do all the sampling and the running of the diagnostics for us. So yeah, that's how we run it. That's how I prefer it. I've been at places where we send a lot of the stuff out, and where the doctors do a lot of the blood drawing, like on a regular basis, and also to collect all the history at the same time. I personally think that makes you slower as a hospital, just because you can kind of get bogged down with into one case, and you can't see another case at the same time for like something you can't. I don't know how to explain that properly, but that's basically, I like the flow of how the techs get everything and do the sampling and running of the diagnostics for us, and we can go in and do what we need to do.
This is Jeff, and unintentionally, we're a little bit different. So I do, well, for skin, like I do most of my cytologies myself. Our technicians do some sampling. So they usually do the blood draws. They usually do collection of cultures. Most ear and skin cytologies I tend to take myself as I'm in the room talking to the client. Our flow is, I think, a common setup where technician goes in, chats with the owner. They get checked in by a receptionist, put into a room. Technician talks to them. They come tell me about the case, and then we go in together. And then I usually will type up something really quickly and send them out the door. And in a classic case, that can be 30 minutes or faster, depending on, are they a yearly case? We're just managing and maintenance. But we're also efficient enough that if it's a really sick case, or, you're here for your summer flare, we know what's going on, we've seen you before, we can kind of wrap things up and get it done quick and be super efficient. And that's also one thing you mentioned I wanted to point out, Chris, is that technicians, and this is one reason we love them and they're excellent, is because they can anticipate things that we're doing, and they are excellent at sampling and looking at stuff. And there are some clinics, I tend to look at my own cytologies after we stain them, but there are some clinics even within our own, our sister clinics, the other, good grief, the other clinics in the same company where technicians read all the sampling, and they're like, yep, so we got the cytology for you. There's this infection going on. Go look at the pet and let us know how you want to treat. And that is really excellent for efficiency.
Yeah, I think you guys bring up some good points with kind of differing a little bit on how things are run. And again, I've seen different clinics do different things, and it really comes down to what works best for their system. So, there's no magic answer as to this is the best way to do things. It's just what works best with your system. So the last little bullet point I wanted to mention here was ways that we can kind of set our clients up for success. So things I've seen done, I've seen online scheduling being done. I feel like that is beneficial to the client to have that ease of access with online scheduling, but also takes a little bit of the load off of our receptionist as well, when it comes to answering the phone and scheduling those appointments. Online check-ins, I don't know if you guys have seen anything with online check-ins, or even uploading records in some sort of format, whether it be through email or an app prior to the visit. Or any other ways that you guys know that we can really set a client up for success, before they even walk in the door with the patient.
This is Jeff. So what we do some online scheduling. I could not tell you the ins and outs of it, but I would need my reception staff to help me. But they can schedule an appointment, and then we have somebody call and confirm those appointments. Usually the day before, one of our technicians or one of the receptionist staff, the CSRs, client service representatives, will give them a heads up call, especially because we have a little bit of a different setup in that we have one main clinic for our regular day-to-day practice, but also we service satellite clinics. So it's really important to have somebody when they're scheduling in general, make sure, like for our satellite clinics, which are often in different cities, they help us service places that do not see dermatologists in their faraway places. Scheduling is super important for us in general, but that I do think the online factor makes us super efficient. And then we have a human on top of that calling and saying, hey, we got you down for this time and this spot. We see you're already on the schedule, so we're calling to confirm the day before. And I think that also it's a good reminder for clients, but also helps them, actually gives them an easy reminder to show up and puts it at front of their mind. And then as far as uploading records, since most of our patients come from referrals, we often will have our staff call and also try to email the clinics that some of these cases are coming from their general practices. And also, if we're not able to get those records, sometimes we will reach out to the clients and say, hey, can you bring your records? We weren't able to get a hold of your family vet. So if you have any useful information, we routinely, for initial visits, will send out like a little email with recommendations for things for them to bring. Bring your diet history. Don't bathe the week that you're coming in because we're derm, so we want to see what's going on. And we usually will also send out a questionnaire before they get there that I like to read over. That'll say things like, when did this problem start? What's going on? What meds have worked? What's not working? How itchy are they? And it really gives me a nice insight into what's going on, because a lot of things, as y'all know, if we get enough good history, we can kind of get a working diagnosis list even before we walk into the room, and then ask a few confirmatory questions and really get things started in a really, really quick manner, I would say.
And this is Chris. I would say for us and how we set up clients for success, we don't have online that I know of, but I know we have text messaging. And I think maybe we do. Maybe I think they can email for an appointment, but then we kind of confirm it, versus like they could just click a spot and make that as their appointment. They have to go through the receptionist to get that appointment done. So I think we can email back and forth, but they're just not making like the time that they want, because that way the receptionist can kind of figure out, okay, is it for which doctor is it for? And also can it be a drop off? If it's something really sick, it should probably be a drop off so it can be here all day versus an appointment. So it just depends on that. But I do like that we do texting a lot. So we can actually, if we, going back to the drop offs, if we can't get a hold of a client for whatever reason, for some reason they respond to texts a lot better, we'll actually just text them, like, hey, can we do blood work? This is so and so from the clinic. And we'll get back a yes or no. Like, okay, great, we'll go ahead and do it. So texting's been a huge help for us recently. We also use it for surgery, when we just tell the client, hey, surgery went well, pick-ups at this time, and we just text them that information. So that's been really efficient for us. Check-ins, I don't think we do any online check-ins. We just come into the clinic and check in. But I think the bigger thing for us has been getting the records beforehand. So we'll have them email it to us if they can, or just bring it with you at the appointment. But we prefer them just to email it, or we can get it from the other hospital they're transferring over from. But yeah, I would say the big thing for us is using text messaging recently. That's been a really huge help for us.
We also do some texting. Ours is newer. I think we started like this year, but I've been a fan of it, especially like I think I forgot to mention earlier, we actually send a lot of our labs out. And which is funny that Chris does so many in-house. I'm like, I don't think we do any in-house. But if you've got like normal good looking blood work and we're continuing the plan, you can text them and say, hey, everything looks great. Call us with any questions. Blood looks awesome, or this test looks great. This test was negative. And I think people like that because it's 2023. I've been texting since I was in 8th grade. It's time for clinics to, to catch up a little bit with the times, I think.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to add to was, I think the texting is really beneficial. I work with some clinics that do that. And especially in this day and age, that's what a lot of people are looking for. It's just quicker and easier, especially if things look normal. Like you said, you get blood work back, it's normal. Just shooting them a quick text. It's easier for somebody to check that real quick. I like what you said, Chris, about sometimes you'll even shoot them text like, hey, can we run some blood work? That's another quicker way than, having to do a phone call and then wait till they get out of their meeting or, whatever it may be to give you a call back. The other thing you mentioned, Jeff, that I really liked was the online form to get a little bit of a history. I have worked with some clinics that do that, and I think it's really beneficial because you already have that history or, the vast majority of that history before they even walk in the door. So that's something you can already be looking over. And then when they get there, it's a lot quicker for the technician or the doctor just to go in and get that history because it's like, all right, well, this is what we have from you so far. Is there anything else to add to that? And it just seems to be a lot quicker and a lot more efficient. With the online scheduling, I will say one thing that I've seen with that is that the people who do the online scheduling or the online scheduled appointments tend to have a slightly higher no-show rate, it seems. So I think confirming those appointments is a good idea. And those may be ones that respond better through text message, because they didn't call, they went online. So they may be more willing to confirm that through a text message than they are through a phone call.
I was going to say too with texting is we also confirm with texting as well. So if they're a new patient or client, whatever, they'll confirm it with text messages. Hey, your appointment's at this time. Please text yes to confirm. So I think that's kind of helped our no-show rate go down. So that's another big benefit of the texting. And also, it's not even with the phone. You're just doing it on a computer. So anyone can log in to the same thing, which is awesome. I think that's a really cool concept now. I mean, again, it's 2023. You should be able to text from your computer to a phone. So
yeah, absolutely. And I encourage any clinic that's not using text messaging to start because again, I think it is really beneficial. Again, it is 2023. So it's just what people are looking for, fast and efficient. But again, I think we had a lot of good talking points here. I think we had some really good discussion. And I think it boils down to, we've seen just amongst the three of us a lot of variation in how the day-to-day works at the clinics that we work at. And it really just comes down to what works best for you and your clinic.
And one other thing, this is Jeff, that I was going to mention is if there's anything like in these episodes that you do or you do differently, DM us, let us know how your clinics work. And also if you have like pushback in your clinics, I highly encourage trying something different, especially if you want to implement something new. Try something for 3 months, see how it goes. Regular meetings are super helpful. So our clinic, I think I've mentioned it before, but like one thing I really like about our clinic is that we do a regular monthly or every other month meeting. We have a doctor's meeting and then we have a full team meeting. And it's really good for seeing like, hey, are we all on the same page? Or I thought we were changing this policy, or what's new? What do we like? What we don't like? And I think those are invaluable because sometimes if there's miscommunication in the clinic, it's like, oh, well, I thought this policy was XYZ and it's, the flow is completely different. I do think that kind of brings people together because I've worked in clinics where the flow was not so great. And it's often not just that people dislike each other, but people just don't understand, what policy changes have happened or what everybody's trying to do. So try something new and see how it goes. And if it doesn't go like you like it, then you can always change it back.
Yeah, I think that's great. Especially, with those team meetings, it's great to kind of have those discussions and figure out what we could do differently that may be more efficient. And that's a way to make sure everybody's on the same page with what those changes are and how to best implement those changes. And then come back for another team meeting and discuss whether or not they they were better or worse than what we were doing before. So I'm glad you added that. So just wrapping things up here, we're just going to end on another fun little question. So what is your favorite place that you have ever visited?
This is Jeff. It is a hard toss-up between Costa Rica, which I've really enjoyed. Amazing nature there. Cloud forests, volcano, hot springs, beautiful beaches. But I think my number one is probably Puerto Rico also for nature, but like clear Caribbean beaches that you can like walk up to almost to your chest and just be in clear water on a warm beach with white sand. I think you can't beat it. And they also have what are called bioluminescence bays. I think there's around 5 in the world, and Puerto Rico has 3. I'm almost positive. Don't quote me. If you Google it and it's different, don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure it's about that many. And I went to one, and you can actually put your hand in the water at night and see algae light up and microorganisms light up as you move around in the water. And it's literally the most beautiful thing I've seen. You cannot get the same experience off of YouTube, but 10 out of 10 would recommend.
That's awesome. And yeah, I've been to Puerto Rico, but we didn't get to do the bioluminescence. We went on a cruise for our honeymoon. So Puerto Rico was where we started out of. But this whole question is hard because there's plenty of places. Like Puerto Rico is beautiful. We went to St. Lucia. That's a beautiful place as well. I would say right now it's either a toss-up between Zion out in Utah or Acadia. We just went there this summer. Both of those are beautiful for their own reasons, and it's hard to pick. Like, you can go back and forth. So I'm going to go with probably one of the national parks. But I'm going to go with Zion. I think Zion was pretty awesome.
Is it mountainy? I know nothing about Zion.
Zion has mountains, and then also like our favorite part was the Narrows. So we actually, I forget which river it is, but you're basically hiking up the river, like through the river. So you're wet the entire time. Like it goes from like your ankles, and then it can get up to your hips sometimes. Maybe a little bit higher depending on how tall you are. And then it levels out again. But basically you're walking and there's just rocks on either side of you. I mean, super tall. So that's a cool, unique, like not very many places have that. So that was an awesome trip. But then the rest of the park has mountains and other hiking trails that you can go on. But so yeah, I think that's probably my favorite. We want to go back, but we also want to go back to Acadia. So really it's kind of a hard toss up.
It's funny you say Zion because that was on my list too when I was going over this, because we did a trip out west and Zion was just amazing. It's beautiful out there.
Did y'all go at the same time?
I don't know. Did we?
We went in August of 21.
No, we went before that. So, but yeah, it's gorgeous out there. We also hit up the Grand Canyon while we were there, and that's just an amazing sight. Like, you can't really even fathom the Grand Canyon until you see it. I know that sounds kind of dumb, but like, you see pictures of it, you're just like, oh yeah, the Grand Canyon, and then you actually are there and see it, and it's just incredible. Now, in terms of, so that's in the U.S., and I'm bad. I'm not even answering my own question because I'm saying several places. But outside the U.S., we went for our honeymoon to Cabo San Lucas, and it's absolutely gorgeous there in Mexico. The water is crystal clear, and it's beautiful. And then last one, I swear,
Jesus.
Thailand. When we went to Thailand. The mountains at the elephant park we were at, it were just the landscape is just awesome. So I know I was bad about answering my own question, but there's a lot to see out there. So get out and travel and explore the world. I guess that's what we're trying to say. Thank you so much for listening to the Dr. Bros. If you enjoyed it, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or anywhere you listen to podcasts. It would also help us if you could share this episode with others who may be interested in today's topic. You can also tell us what you want to hear. You can drop suggestions in the comments or shoot us an email at thedrbros@gmail.com or DM us at thedrbros on Instagram. You can find me personally at Dr. Adam DVM on Instagram. That's DRADAMDVM.
And this is Jeff. If you want to find me, I'm on Instagram and TikTok at DermDrJeff, DermDogtor.
And this is Chris. If you want to reach me on Instagram, you can reach me at dr.chrishernandez. That's dr.chrishernandez.